Hi folks, Six Lasers here. Now I've been a bit quiet of late, so much so that a number of people have been in touch to ask if everything's alright, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful to have good friends in the knife community who like to ask after me. Everything is as well as it could be. You know, building on last year, things are not going to be perfect, probably ever, but they're a lot better than perhaps they were, and certainly I'm feeling better about it. Now, what I want to talk to you today about is the knife that my wife bought me for Valentine's Day. Now, it's not one of these ones that's on the screen, but I wanted just to show these first, partly because at least two of them are two of my real favourite knives. Though I like them all, the horn one is probably the ox horn one here is probably the one I'm least enamoured of. But mother of pearl and stag, as anybody knows, are my favourite materials. I also have this thing for ram's horn and the buttery translucence. But the reason I'm showing you these is because back in the, I think it was about the 1830s or thereabouts, Joseph Rogers, now part of the Eggington Group in Sheffield, came up with the Wharncliffe knife, which is attributed to Lord Wharncliffe, who was a Sheffield lord and a friend of Joseph Rogers, and introduced them to I think it was the Prince Regent, and was instrumental perhaps in getting their royal warrant back in those days. Anyway, he introduced a knife which became known as the Wharncliffe, and if you look in the Wharncliffe pattern books, it looks like these knives here. Now sometimes it was a 3-blade whittler, sometimes it was a 2-blade knife, and occasionally it's a 1-blade knife. Now these three are all from Taylor's Eyewitness, hoping very shortly to have a Stephen Cocker one as well, which is as near the original as I think you'll probably ever get, because I think it's designed to be so. These ones are, as I say, from Taylor's Eyewitness, and as many of you know, I collect Taylor's Eyewitness, so it'll not be surprising to know that I have 4 of this pattern. It's one of my favourite patterns, and certainly as a carry knife, I really like to carry one of these. This relatively new mother of pearl one, which one of my lovely subscribers bought me, is you know, it's an absolute stunner, and if I wanted to show off, that's the knife I'm going to carry. Plus these are very UK friendly, because you know, they're not just sub 3 inches, I think there's probably sub 2 inches, and they look like a little pocket knife. They don't look like a weapon. So I'm very very fond of carrying these. They're a little bit bigger than the sort of sleeve board pen knives that I might have carried when I was trying to be posh, but these suit my clumsy hands. The action on them's not too hard, and they look great, and they're big enough to fill the hand. Anyway, so why am I showing you all of this? Well, my wife bought me this knife, which in some ways doesn't seem at all related, but actually I think it's quite closely related. Now this is from Queen Pocket Knives. Now Queen Pocket Knives used to be a big American knife maker, and in some ways the forerunner to GEC. Certainly their production manager left and founded GEC. Since then Queen went bust. The name has become, I assume, owned by Smoky Mountain Knife Works. I don't know that, but I assume so, because in many ways these knives have a lot in common with the Rough Rider knives that they have produced in China. So I just assume this is the same. But you know, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Now the other thing is that the Queen name has been taken back to America, and I don't know who they're actually going to get to make the knives. Whether, I don't think they're opening a factory, a Queen factory, but they're going to be made in the USA. Now, in many ways, that doesn't really matter to me very much. I'm not American. They're not being made in Sheffield, and they never were made in Sheffield. Or Queen knives were never made in Sheffield, so it doesn't really matter. But this one, and for most of them, were made in China. Now they come in these fancy boxes, which is very much like the, oops, chasing it across the desk here, very much like the ones that Rough Rider come in with a magnetic front. Inside you've got the little knife in a plastic bag. So let's take that out of there, put the box aside, and here is the knife. Now, there are two parts to what make a Wharncliffe as far as I'm concerned. One obviously is the Wharncliffe blade, but the other is this shape. Now these two, obviously this being a tailor's one and this being the Queen one, are very similar in shape, particularly the shape of this top bolster here, with the shallower curve on the front and the harder curve on the top here, the serpentine shape, and a very similar sort of tail end bolster here. As I say, they're pretty much the same size, but the blades are a little bit different. But these are both pin construction traditional pocket knives. Obviously this one's in mother of pearl, but I've got obviously bone and ram's horn and stag over there as well. This one here is in saw cut bone, and I think it's quite a nice rendition of this knife. It has these nice lined bolsters. It has the Queen shield, which I suppose in some ways, you know, Americans will rightly feel that you know, that should really be on an American-made knife, but well, it isn't. I wonder if you know, Taylor's Eyewitness or Rogers or Winston were to be made in China, whether they would have the same meaning to me. I suspect not. Anyway, I learnt my lesson about trying to open knives on camera, so there we are. It has a nice little half stop, which is very good, and a pretty good action actually when it comes to opening. This knife is stiff enough to be perfectly acceptable on the action, but gentle enough to be openable. So if I compare this to another of the Taylor's ones, I'll get a look in here, you will find it's a similar looking knife. What's different, two principal points of difference, and then one minor one. I mean, obviously the different covers, the lines on the bolsters, they could be on a knife or not on a knife. It doesn't really fundamentally change the knife, it just makes it a little bit, perhaps a better quality. But we have here a much longer Wharncliffe blade, and this is probably what's become known as a Wharncliffe blade much more, whereas the original Wharncliffe blades were generally shorter, and generally they go up when they leave the bolster here, up and then down, whereas many modern Wharncliffe blades tend to sort of taper from the ricasso all the way to the point. Now this actually does have that slight rise in it, but it does rather elongate the blade, which in some ways makes it look a little bit less like a traditional Wharncliffe. Obviously this on the Tailor's Witness is a twin blade knife, but this could easily have been a twin blade knife if they decided that that was the way they wanted to make it. But I suspect because it's a single spring knife, you know, it's two blades off the same spring, and you would probably, just a single spring, you would probably have to have reduced the length of that blade in order to fit the other blade into the handle as well. And they obviously decided as a design choice to go for the single blade. But having said that, this is a really well made knife. You know, there's no gapping on it or anything like that, nor should there be, because you know this is effectively a hand finished but machine made knife, like you know, GC, Rough Rider, all these other people nowadays. You know, the parts are all cut with lasers or water jets or whatever. They're CNC ground, so all the pieces are flat and fit together. There's no cutting liners out of brass sheet and flattening it, dishing it, and then assembling these knives. Everything in here is absolutely flat, and so when they pin it together, there's really no excuse for getting it wrong. One thing I do like about these is that they are in fact pinned. A lot of modern knives now use rivets. Now, there's no harm in using a rivet, and rivets have been around for a long time, but I like my traditional pin knives, to be pinned. It's just a thing that I like. It means somebody stood there with a hammer on a stiddy and pinned those pins. I don't think there's a machine that can do them, other than a riveter, and a riveter produces a different look. They're sort of rounded, often countersunk as well, which is not ideal. It doesn't have that traditional hafted look to the knife. Anyway, there it is. It's a fairly simple knife. There's one other thing about this knife that caught my eye, which I quite liked. It's unusual on a traditional knife, but I think welcome nonetheless. There is a, I don't know if you can see it there. There's a lanyard pin in the tail of the knife. You'd have to put quite a thin cord through that if you wanted to put a lanyard on it, but you could. And I'm quite a fan of lanyards on knives, perhaps little lanyards rather than great big things, but I find it easier to get knives in and out of a slip or out my pocket if there's a wee fob on the end of it. So yes, I'm pleased to see that. Anyway, that's probably all there is to say about it. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward knife. We could do a couple of measurements just to show you what size it is. Overall, we're talking about something like 6 3/8 of an inch. We have a blade of 2 3/4 inches, which is obviously, that's quite a bit longer than the Tailor's version, which is only 2 inches. So there we have it, 2 different iterations, 2 different interpretations of the original Wharncliffe Whittler small game knife of originally of Lord Wharncliffe and Joseph Rogers, manufacturer back in the earlier part of the 19th century. So thank you very much. If you like this stuff, subscribe, give it a thumbs up. I genuinely intend to produce some more videos. I'm going to get on with my collection video. I keep finding excuses not to get started. The 2 different handle materials I was going to do next are both. I'm expecting one of each in, so I keep putting it off, but I think I might as well do them. And if the other ones turn up, well, we'll add them in, do a little supplement. But anyway, there we are, the Wharncliffe knife, and thank you very much to my wife for adding this one to my collection. Thank you very much. Bye.